South African Communist Party General Secretary Dr. Blade Nzimande says he welcomes efforts by government to fight corruption. The party is today holding a virtual rally and it's marking the 99th founding anniversary. Nzimande has called for action against those involved in corruption, including the procurement of PPEs as well as in the building of COVID-19 hospitals.
The other thing that is a priority to us, we must intensify the struggle to end the tenderization of the state and the corruption that it breeds and tackle its associated tendencies like tenderpreneurs and their COVID-19 manifestation, what some are referring to as COVIDpreneurs. We want to say that tenderization of the state and the corruption that it breeds constitutes one of the single biggest threats to our national liberation movement, the very same movement that brought about democracy in our country. We must say it's very sad today because in our movement, in the 70s and the 80s, we were very proud that our revolution will not degenerate like some of the heroic revolutions that we were seeing degenerating. Nevertheless, we cannot proudly say so today, given the threat that is posed by corruption, tenderpreneurship within our own ranks, that unless we defeat corruption, we will actually bid our revolution goodbye.
So Mapaila is the SACP's first Deputy General Secretary. He joins me now for, I suppose, some reflections. Soli, the SACP is just a year shy of its centenary. It's a long time to be around. How would you describe the position of the party today within the tripartite alliance?
Well, I think your line is not so good, but if I understood your question well, the party continues to contribute immensely within the framework of the Revolutionary Alliance headed by the ANC in the course of advancing the interest of the poor and the rest of the people of South Africa, ensuring that our revolution, the National Democratic Revolution, which seeks to resolve major interrelated problems of continued racism or national inequality, as well as to address sexism, basically ending patriarchy and creating a non-sexist society, at the core of which in today's South Africa we see it expressed through gender-based violence, but patriarchy, which is the source of that particular problem of male domination over women, as well as to resolve the economic problems of the people, to create a society of equals with regard to access to economic resources of the people. That is why in that revolution which has brought this alliance, we cannot allow anyone who steals from the poor, because that is completely against what we stood for, as expressed much more clearly by our General Secretary today on our 99th anniversary message.
How much responsibility does the SACP bear for the state that South Africa is in today? Many people, of course, blame the ANC, but surely they're not singularly responsible for the crises, the multiple crises that we find ourselves in.
Well, we take full responsibility for the good and the wrong things that are happening in government. That is why we are fighting very hard from inside the alliance to make sure that government is able to express itself clearly and take concrete action against those that are involved. And we also act from outside government. You would have seen we launched massive campaigns over the years against corruption, and we continue to have joint programs with other organizations, civil society organizations that we have convened in numerous occasions to fight against corruption and state capture. Now we are part and parcel of the program with civil society organization and the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, for instance, for the Orange Overall campaign, for those who are stealing from the public to be practically arrested, because we have set up every other system to be in place, but we just want to see an example of people that are directly involved being sent to jail and to account for their misaction. So it is in this regard that we can't necessarily only point the blame, because we are part and parcel of the Revolutionary Alliance, but we are able to say if we were in charge today, definitely things will be much more different in the posture towards corruption. We think the leadership sometimes mollycoddles each other, and there's too much interest, and that is why we're not able to deal with this matter urgently. If you look at the example we gave today of BBS, even when it came to a point of integrity inside the African National Congress, people are pointed out to say these ones were directly involved, but for 2 years the organization doesn't take action, and later on those people just come back and say, but we have been maligned for 2 years, no action has been taken. So we have a movement that dilly-dallies when it comes to responding to problems of corruption in communities.
It sounds very much to me, Soli, that perhaps the SACP is being diluted, that your position on many issues is being diluted because of this alliance that you are in. As you look ahead towards 100 years of existence, is coming out of the tripartite alliance something that you're considering?
Well, you know, we've debated this matter even in our last Special National Congress. There's a debate now that is no longer only an SACP debate, because that decision will affect the rest of the alliance and its composition today. Even it will affect deeply the South African revolution. But we cannot donate the revolution to criminals and keep quiet and say in the name of the alliance we should keep things going on like this. We've already indicated to our partners that there is a necessity to act decisively in this regard, to show example, and to not even look at who is senior, who's not senior when we take such an action. So in that regard, the debate on whether we will participate in the elections or not, the ANC-NGC itself will debate this matter. The COSATU has been discussing this matter. We have resolved this matter ourselves, and we are now awaiting our components so that when they resolve this from within their own structures, we are able to have a common position to go forward. At the core is the fact that the movement as we have today has the best and the most comprehensive transformational program than perhaps any other organization. It is therefore perhaps important that such a movement should actually clean itself in order to advance such a program. But in the manner that things are happening, we feel that program has been retarded by unnecessary wastage through corruption and many other things, for instance, massive influence by imperialist forces that divert our focus, when actually we have economy here that can respond effectively to the needs of the people of this country. We can't do things independently, differently. For instance, we have mentioned this question about public banking system, for instance, which would have the capacity to also generate extra resources beyond just the Reserve Bank, but public banking system itself. As you know, today's economy worldwide, even in South Africa, it's financialized, meaning that it's highly controlled by the financial sector, the banks and the insurance groups. So it is, and other associated financial institutions. But it is important, therefore, that in articulating and taking forward such a revolution, if the movement as led by the ANC, there are people that are delaying the end of poverty in our country, end of hunger in our country, the SACP would have absolutely no choice but to stand on its own. But at the moment, we're standing together within the framework of the alliance. That's what we're seeking to consolidate.
But Soli, on the one hand, you're talking about the social conditions that would necessitate a pull out of the tripartite alliance of the SACP. And you're saying now is not that moment. And yet the social conditions meet the criteria that the SACP is talking about. So there seems to be a disconnect, and often it's seen as a threat, an empty threat by the SACP that will go this journey alone, whereas in fact there doesn't seem to be a real will or even appetite to do it.
No, it's not an empty threat. I mean, if you know, when we convened in Umbizo in 2017 here in Johannesburg. One of the key demands was the change in the leadership of the prosecution authority, for instance, the change in the leadership of the police, including interventions in different areas in the criminal justice system. And most of those changes have taken place, changes at SARS. The various areas that were directly involved in either advancing or protecting corrupt activities. So to that extent, important measures have been taken. Like we indicated, we called for an inquiry into state capture, for instance. It has been established, and we didn't anticipate, even the Justice Zonde himself, I don't think he has anticipated what he found. So as a result, this thing is delayed. But we have called for important measures. Some of those measures have been acceded to, and they are being implemented. It is perhaps the pace of implementation that we want to see much more accelerated, given that that pace of implementation, the way it is too slow, it's almost overcome by the wrong things that are taking place in society. And particularly during this period of COVID-19 crisis, where we've also seen massive looting, including throwing of PPEs in rivers and so forth. I mean, this is completely unjustified and unacceptable.
All right, Soli, we're going to have to leave it there for tonight. Soli Mapaila is the SACP's first Deputy General Secretary.